Hello and welcome to the Holistic Health Detective. I'm Rebecca Jones, and today we're going to be covering a very interesting topic, blood results, how to understand what you're looking at on blood results to interpret them from a nutritional viewpoint with the aim of optimal health, great energy, great sleep, wonderful immune function, balanced hormones, etc. So uh, when we talk about reference, I'm going to give a couple of examples actually of two different nutrients to kind of illustrate the point. So when we talk about reference ranges, that's an interesting place to start. So when you have a population and you measure a segment of the population for a nutrient, 90% of the people will fit in a reference range, which is like an A to B. So from 1 to 4, whatever it is, 90% of the people will be in that range. Outside of that, you're starting to head in towards significant deficiency symptoms or like toxicity, where there's just too much of that in the body. But the majority, the 90% of the people that are not showing disease symptoms of any kind, uh, that's where the reference range comes from. So when we're talking about disease, and well, let's say a deficiency, we're talking about scurvy, for example, with vitamin C. So significant, health, detrimental health conditions that result from that nutrient. So here we go. We've got this reference range. No one's really overtly ill, but they may not be very healthy. They may not have great sleep or immune function or whatever, but it's not like they're in the realm of ideal health, but they're not significantly ill. So that's where you get this reference range. It's 90% of those people at that time in that area. So interestingly, let's start with zinc, because zinc's very interesting from a New Zealand point of view. Zinc is not very rich in our soil, but it's very, very rich in our shellfish. So 30 odd years ago, for people who were around back then, they would remember eating a lot of shellfish. We collected pippies and tuaturas and cockles and mussels and oysters. We ate a lot of shellfish, which is very rich in zinc, other minerals and vitamins as well, but particularly zinc. And so it's not really rich in our soil. We do get some zinc in meat. It's a very distant second, and some in the sunflower seeds, but it's not rich in those food sources. So over time, of course, we eat these days a lot less shellfish. We don't go to the beach and gather it like we did 30 years ago, and it's just not part of our regular diet to the extent that it was, say, 30 years ago. So for as long as I've been around in health, the reference range for zinc has been 12 to 20 micromoles. And that's based on quite old data, because obviously our zinc status 30 years ago was very different, because shellfish was a lot more prevalent in our diet than it is now. So interestingly, not too long ago, a few years ago, the reference range shifted downwards, which is a reflection of that reduced zinc status in the population and the average of the population. So it went from 12 to 20 micromoles down to 9 to 17. So for those integrative doctors, functional medicine type practitioners, they're doing a lot of zinc. Zinc's very, very, very important in the body. I mean, it's needed to synthesize proteins. It's needed to make melatonin for good sleep. It's vital for the immune system to ward off viral illness and things like that. It balances the hormones, very interesting that way. It for both men and women. It reduces pain and inflammation in the body, brings inflammatory conditions under control by balancing that. So it has more things in the body that you could possibly count. It detoxifies. It's part of the detoxification through the liver, and removing heavy metals from the body and chemicals, etc. So it's a very important nutrient, as you can see. So what we did with the measurement of zinc, we were getting lots of 8, 9s, and 10s coming back, lots. So that was well below the 12 to 20 reference range that was there at the time. So what we did is we started supplementing to bring them up, and we were trying to aim just for 12. But what we found, actually, if we got someone into the middle of the reference range, at 14, things were humming, like, great immune function, great sleep, great energy, hormonally vast improvements in the hormonal balance, men and women. So less pain, inflammation, better, resistance to viral illnesses, things like that. So that's what we found. We also found that by dosing, we had to learn a lot on how to dose to move the needle somewhat. What we found of dosing, say 25 to 30 milligrams twice daily, which is like 50 to 60 milligrams elemental zinc a day for 1 month would move the needle 1 point. So if their level was 10, they would move up to 12 and then 13. That's how long it took. So that was pretty standard. I mean, obviously people are different person to person, but bodies, from a nutritional point of view, generally speaking, they respond the same way, So that's taking aside any really bad problems with absorption, which when it comes to zinc is not that common, does happen, but you've got to take that into account if there is an inflammatory bowel disease or something like that. So in a person with, your average digestion, 1 month to move 1 point. And so you're aiming for about 14. So moving that reference range down to 9 means the majority of people are not coming back deficient, and then nothing is done, and then missing out on really optimal health, really optimal physical functioning. So it's not a severe deficiency because a severe zinc deficiency is quite bad, but it's an insufficiency, so not enough for optimal health. So we're aiming for, getting someone feeling great and having energy and sleeping, etc. So that's what happens with reference ranges, and that's how it can change. Also, that might change country to country, right? So the zinc intake or the zinc availability in the soil can make a difference there. Another very interesting one here is vitamin D. So vitamin D, you don't get it from the sun. So it's a bit of a myth that you get it from the sun. The sun activates a chemical in your skin, which then in the body converts to vitamin D through a series of processes, and then you get your active levels of vitamin D. So yes, not having enough sun will definitely impact your vitamin D and covering up and things like that. So that's vitamin D is an interesting one because the reference range is 50 to 150 nanomoles, and that is based on avoiding osteoporosis. So it's basically you need vitamin D to absorb calcium from your diet, and if you don't absorb calcium, then your bones get fragile. So that's what that reference range comes about from. But vitamin D is very interesting. It improves the quality of the sleep. It reduces pain in the body. It's extraordinary for the immune system and getting over illnesses faster. It's great for headaches. There's a lot of things vitamin D actually helps. It can really lift mood. It has an effect on the body in terms of energy and mood. So so you want your vitamin D to be pretty good. But one of the very interesting things about it is it's exceptionally useful in preventing type 2 diabetes, but also because what it does is it makes the insulin that you have more sensitive. And type 2 diabetes is when your body is not sensitive to insulin. It's not responding and the insulin's not working and the blood sugar goes high. So with vitamin D, bam, I've seen some amazing results on lowering insulin levels just by optimizing vitamin D or correcting a deficiency. So interestingly, there was a lot of research done on vitamin D in New Zealand, and what they found that for blood sugar control, for prevention or for people who already have type 2 diabetes, to improve the situation, a minimum of 75 nanomoles is ideal to assist with blood sugar control. So that's 75 to 150, not 50 to 150. So 50 to 150 is a big reference range. And what I've seen is that when you get vitamin D up around 80 to 100, that's where the magic is. That's where people start to go, wow, I feel great. I've got great energy. They start to be able to ward off winter ills and things like that. So vitamin D is very, very important in the body. And interestingly, from that research, I can't remember what university it was. It'll come to me in a minute. But the reference range did, for a few months, actually change. So from 50 to 150, it changed to 75 to 150 and to reflect the positive outcomes of that research, which is awesome. It was a lovely pivot to see that there was new information came on board, and that was reflected in the reference range. Unfortunately, it flipped back again. Don't know why that was. I don't know if there was some disagreement or argument about that, but it was, at the time, it was a lovely thing to see that there was this response to more data. So there you go. Within New Zealand, even, we have different reference ranges for different regions. So you can see that if a population suddenly changed to being a more of an outdoors population, or in the areas where their people are predominantly farming communities, their vitamin D levels are going to be higher because they're outdoors a lot more. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So when you're talking about vitamin D and zinc, those two, middle of the reference range. With zinc, you don't want to go too high. If you keep going up and up and up, then you are going to deplete your copper. So zinc and copper are on a bit of a seesaw. And as I mentioned, just to recap, that the 50 milligrams to 60 milligrams a day, split dose, so morning and night, gives you a movement up of 1 point per month. So if you had, say, a zinc level of 10, you would dose for about 5 months, and you could bring it up 5-6 months. You could bring it up, but once it's optimized with zinc, you only need to really supplement once a year for 3 months. I mean, winter's great because then you have your, helps with your immune system and winter ills and things like that. So, and that's going to keep you in a nice range of zinc, but not too high and not too low. So that's for your hormones and your detoxification systems and your sleep and your energy levels and everything. So both with so about 100 nanomoles are in that zone for vitamin D, and around 14, 15, around that zone for zinc. From those measurements, that's the micromoles for zinc and the nanomoles for vitamin D. All right, I hope you found that interesting. I find it fascinating, and certainly it's very useful data if you are aiming for really optimizing your health and having the best quality physical well-being that you can get. And please feel free to pass that on to anyone who might find it useful. And thank you so much for listening. Have a very happy and healthy day.